In my city, we saw 2 police officers beat by a mob of migrants.
Angry. As a citizen who lives here, I'm saying to myself, what happened? As a cop, I wish I could be there to help them.
Others, while they released without bail, and possibly have now gotten out of the city.
Governor Kathy Hochul sounded off, upset to learn those charged so far were released without bail.
Letter to the Biden administration formally requesting that it take executive action to address New York's migrant crisis.
Police, right here, as you can see, trying to break up a group of young men outside a migrant shelter Saturday night.
If someone commits a crime against a police officer in the state of New York and they're not here legally, it's definitely worth checking into. Governor Kathy Hochul said, "Cop attackers as cowards." One of the most senior officials in the New York Police Department has stated that the 8 migrants who are accused of attacking 2 police officers in a Midtown attack that was captured on camera are cowards who should be sitting on Rikers Island. On Wednesday, after being arraigned in court, one of the accused displayed a defiant posture by flashing 2 middle fingers. Every single one of the 5 young men who were brought into prison for the fight that took place on Saturday night outside of a migrant shelter located on West 42nd Street near 7th Avenue has been freed without bond, which has further fueled the already intense debate that is taking place over the migrant situation in the city. During the annual State of the NYPD breakfast, which took place at Cipriani 42nd Street, approximately 5 blocks away from the location where the attack took place, New York Police Department Chief of Patrol John Chell referred to the incident as reprehensible. All of them are cowards. It is 8 individuals who were attacking a lieutenant and a police officer, and they are running up to them in order to kick them in the face. A security video that was provided by the police indicates that the 2 officers were attempting to calm down a group of people who were acting in an unruly manner outside of the Candler building just before the fight broke out at approximately 8:30 p.m. When 2 law enforcement officers are attempting to place a man wearing a yellow jacket under custody, they are suddenly attacked by a large number of individuals from all directions. According to a security officer who was present at the time, they were kicking and punching one of the cops, as reported by the Daily News on Tuesday. They stormed the police station. It was really crazy, according to Chell. The attack resulted in all of the officers receiving scrapes, bumps, and bruises. What Chell remarked on Wednesday was that the video speaks for itself. 8-on-2 is a difficult situation to fight, the officer said, but they stayed and fought. The following individuals were taken into custody by law enforcement officers: Yorman Reverend, 24, Darwin Andres Gomez Izquil, 19, Wilson Juarez, 21, and Calvin Servita Arocha, 19. On Monday evening, Joanne Bowada, who is 22 years old, was recognized as a 5th suspect. In addition to other accusations, each of the 5 individuals was charged with either attack on a police officer, attack on a gang, or attempted attack, among other offenses. However, Chell pointed out that the 4 individuals who were taken into custody on Saturday night were released without bond following their arraignment in Manhattan Criminal Court. Immediately after his arraignment on Wednesday, Bowada was likewise released without bail. This was due to the fact that his lawyers vehemently denied that the individual was involved in the altercation. "If you watch the videotape, you will not see him there," said attorney Javier Damian. "It is not true that he was involved in this issue in any way." According to the assertions of the prosecution, one of the cops who participated in the attack recalled Bowada's distinctive pink shoes and recognized him in a wanted flyer that was associated with the incident. When asked in Spanish, he responded, "I don't understand. There was nothing that I did." In the grand scheme of things, Chell framed the attack. According to what he said, they ought to be sitting on Rikers, being indicted this week, and being removed from our streets.
And I told the ICE director quite clearly, like, I want these individuals to be deported, period.
Can suggest to this bipartisan committee for smart, competitive immigration reform that will strengthen our national security.
In my city, we saw 2 police officers beat by a mob of migrants.
This after the state seized control of the park to arrest migrants, and a Supreme Court ruling stating those federal agents can cut.
Angry. As a citizen who lives here, I'm saying to myself, what happened? As a cop, I wish I could be there to help him.
An alien can be convicted of multiple DUI offenses and still be eligible for amnesty under this reconciliation bill.
For the 4 that arrested that day, bail was not requested. But the judge had an opportunity to obviously override that and say no.
Do you want to know the reason why our law enforcement officers are being attacked? This action has no repercussions. We have to make this modification. The conclusion of the tale. Reverend, one of the guys who was detained on Saturday, was given an order to be placed on supervised release, which means that he was then released from custody but is required to meet with a social worker prior to his subsequent court hearing. According to Doug Cohen, a spokesman from the district attorney's office, everyone who was arraigned faces the possibility of serving up to 7 years in prison if they are found guilty. He stated that it is never acceptable to use crime against law enforcement agents, and he also mentioned that the investigation into the fight is still underway. It is of the utmost importance that we be able to definitively identify each defendant and clarify the role that each participant played in the occurrence. There was an initial lack of clarity on whether or not the office of the district attorney requested that the defendants be kept on bail. It is unethical and unacceptable to use crime against New York City Police Department officers and municipal workers who are performing their responsibilities, or against any New Yorker in general. According to a statement released by Shirley Limongi, a spokesperson for Council Speaker Adrian Adams, D. Queens, it is of the utmost importance that individuals who perpetrate acts of crime are held accountable for their consequences. According to the police, 3 of the 5 individuals who were arrested reside in migrant shelters located in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. In accordance with the police, Gomez Iskil hails from Mississippi, and Bawada is currently without a house. There was not a single man who was detained who resided in the Candler building, which was transformed into a mega shelter for migrants by the city in March. According to the guard, men frequently congregate behind the building to share a drink and a cigarette. The refuge that is located in the Candler building has the capacity to house hundreds of migrants, and the location, which was formerly vacant, has been providing all kinds of services, including medical treatments. The shelter in question was one of the first places where adult migrants were given notifications providing them with 30 days notice that they were required to leave. More than 100,000 people arrived in the city in just the previous year. An altercation that broke out in September in East Williamsburg, Brooklyn, when policemen confiscated scooters resulted in 6 people being arrested and 2 police officers being hurt. This incident was one of a handful of violent episodes that were linked to immigration. The fact that the 2 cops were able to maintain their composure during the altercation was something that Chell expressed his pride in. But he also stated that the release of the 4 criminals will only encourage others to attack police officers in the future. The next time a bad person gets stopped by a police officer, they might have to go for it as well. Chell said, if a bad person sees what happened here, with their release, they might have to go for it.
The bill denies eligibility for an alien who has been convicted of 3 or more offenses.
They were in front of a judge, and we just don't understand why bail wasn't requested.
Under the current text, an alien convicted of a DUI can still get amnesty.
Cops have been beaten up by these guys, right?
Absolutely.
She knew that, and she still didn't hold them?
The record-breaking numbers here that we are just getting from Customs and Border Protection is showing what we have been reporting.
And as a chief patrol, how did we get here? And why did this happen?
Is it to your benefit if you live in those areas where illegals are casting their vote for you? Politically, is it to your benefit?
Migrants should be deported. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York stated on Thursday that deportation is the appropriate course of action for the alleged immigrants who were seen on camera abusing 2 police officers in Times Square over the weekend. When asked how many persons had been taken into custody in relation to the attacks, she replied, "Get them all and send them back. Our police officers are not touched by you. No one is touched by you." After being questioned by a reporter on Wednesday if the individual should be deported, she responded in a similar manner. "I believe that should be investigated. If an individual who is not lawfully here in the state of New York commits a crime against a police officer, very much worth looking into," Democratic Congressman Hochul stated. All 7 of the individuals detained in the incident thus far are migrants, a police officer informed NBC News on Thursday. However, NBC News was unable to verify this information or learn how long the individuals had been in the country. One or more of them provided police addresses that have served as havens for recently arrived migrants. The immigration status of the accused was not disclosed by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. An incident turned physical at 8:30 p.m. on Saturday while police were attempting to disperse an unruly group on 42nd Street, according to a police spokesperson. Multiple unidentified individuals repeatedly kicked and punched the officers in the head and body, the spokesperson added, as they attempted to arrest someone. Then, according to the police, the people fled, and the officers only suffered minor wounds. Chief of Patrol John Chell denounced the attacks and labeled the perpetrators as cowards. He added that one lieutenant was among the 8 individuals who participated in the attack on the cops. All of them are accused of gang crime, attack on a police officer, disrupting government operations, and disorderly conduct. According to the spokeswoman, the 5 suspects are facing felonies, which have a maximum sentence of 7 years. Hochul chastised the decision to release the suspects on Wednesday. She remarked, "I'm not satisfied at all with that. There should never be a situation when these law enforcement officials are physically attacked. It's bad on all counts, and I want the courts and prosecutors to act morally. Our laws regarding bail have been modified. Because of the actions we took in the 2022 and 2023 budgets, we now have new legislation, and the number of repeat offenders is declining."
14 versus 2. As you mentioned, 7 arrested. 1 finally got bail, but
where the convictions were on different dates and the alien was imprisoned for collectively 90 days or more.
we're on a bus somewhere in America going somewhere right now.
Yeah.
And they had insult to injury to all of us. And we're very benevolent people in New York.
The city of New York was beside itself about all these migrants being bused to New York City.
Was the video played in court? We don't know that answer. But it shouldn't matter. When 4 attacked 2 and...
Shelby Park in Eagle Pass 3 weeks ago, removing Border Patrol agents and putting in new measures to stem illegal immigration.
Huge showing of support for the officers who were attacked. Police packed the courtroom following the brutal attack of 2 officers.
Although there is a ton of research to support its effectiveness, I find the situation disgusting. Chell was upset that several of the suspects has been freed early on Friday morning. He stated on Morning Joe, "We just don't understand why bail wasn't requested. However, that doesn't lessen the possibility that the judge considered the circumstances. I'm not sure if she saw the footage. She had the chance to intervene and say, well, hold on a second, but we don't know yet." Additionally, according to Chell, it's thought that a few of the men that were freed left New York via bus. The district attorney's office declared on Friday that it was looking into the claims. The conditions of their release do not mandate that the men remain in New York. On suspicion of robbery and felony attack, 2 further guys, Yohenry Brito, 24, and Janry Barrows, 21, were taken into custody. Barrows will not face charges, according to the district attorney's office. There is not sufficient evidence that he is one of the people who committed this terrible act, an office spokesperson stated. The spokeswoman stated in a statement, "The question here is whether the person arrested was even involved."
Repel migrants as well as bus and fly migrants to New York, Chicago, and other places like that.
Of the 7 suspects arrested for beating up 2 cops near Times Square, only 1 has been ordered to be held with bail.
Letter to the Biden administration formally requesting that it take executive action to address New York's migrant crisis.
Others, while they released without bail and possibly have now gotten out of the city.
Workers are concerned that over the past year, more than 100,000 asylum seekers have arrived in our state. Get them all and send them back. You don't touch our police officers. You don't touch anybody.
Governor Hochul was asked if she felt those responsible for the attack should be deported.
Alvin Bragg defends migrants. As a Supreme Court justice criticizes Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg for pursuing COVID immunization card dodgers, Bragg has justified the decision to free a group of migrants who had allegedly attacked police officers in Times Square. After a brutal attack on NYPD police in Times Square last Saturday, 7 defendants were taken into custody and charged with felony attack and robbery. It is now feared that 4 of the people who were thought to be involved and who were freed without bond used the church-affiliated migrant charity to escape by bus to California. Reporters questioned Bragg about his choice on Friday, but he remained silent and left without responding. I hear one reporter asking, "Why were those migrants released?" and another asking, "Do you regret it? Do you feel bad for releasing these migrants?" Throughout, Bragg remained silent and avoided interacting with the group that followed him to his vehicle. Later that day, at a press conference, Bragg justified the decision to release the group, claiming it was supported by the information at hand. While the video is shocking and disturbing, it is essential that we conclusively identify each defendant in order to secure convictions in a court of law, he stated. Attacks on police officers are not acceptable in Manhattan. This week, I watched the tape. Despicable behavior. I was both outraged and repulsed by it. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office stated that Brito's distinct tattoo allowed for his positive identification in the attack footage, which is why the $15,000 cash bail or $50,000 bond was necessary. A suspect wearing a yellow sweater and the police officers got into a brawl. As the 2 officers attempted to pin down one of the other males and rip off his sweatshirt, the migrants allegedly began to attack them, kicking them in the head and body. After that, the refugees fled, heading east on 42nd Street in the direction of 7th Avenue. Law enforcement officials told the Post that Gomez, Arocha, Juarez, and Reverend are suspected of giving fictitious names to a non-profit organization with ties to a church that assists migrants in finding transportation out of the city. Iskil, Arocha, and Wilson were the 3 guys released on their own recognizance, which means they were not given any bond while their case are still pending. Reverend was released under supervision and without posting bail. After robbing and attacking a Nordstrom Rack employee in November, he already has 2 pending cases for attack and robbery in Manhattan. Judge Brendan T. Lantry of the state Supreme Court chastised Bragg earlier this week and dropped felony charges his agency had brought against 2 New Yorkers for purchasing phony COVID vaccination cards. Lantry dismissed the accusations against the 2 unidentified in the case, calling it excessively complicated. Clifford is accused of selling hundreds of fictitious vaccination cards to jab dodgers in the New York City area for $200 each. According to Lantry, who was charged with felony criminal possession of a counterfeit instrument, Bragg's office had cherry-picked cases to pursue and charge. In the Tuesday filed ruling, Lantry stated that Bragg's office routinely moves to dismiss significantly more serious counts or entire indictments to avoid jeopardizing people's immigration status or from imposing harsher penalties on previously convicted felons. Furthermore, it stated, These motions submitted by Bragg and his prosecutors are made months or even years after the 45-day period to dismiss serious felony offenses that are violent and non-violent, such as drug sales, robberies, burglaries, and physical attacks has passed. Since entering office in 2022, Bragg has faced criticisms for lowering felony charges in numerous cases, including armed robbery and some narcotics offenses, and for not requesting prison term for certain counts. Regarding the group of migrants who allegedly attacked police officers in Times Square, actor Michael Rappaport offered his thoughts. He declared that he is willing to support Donald Trump in the 2024 election because of the fury surrounding the attack of an NYPD police officer by a migrant in Times Square.
Yesterday, 24-year-old Yohenry Brito was the first to be ordered by the DA's office.
This case has 2 prior arrests for shoplifting incidents where he allegedly fought with security personnel.
I want to be very clear. Our borders are not open.
When a barrage of people take turns kicking and punching the lieutenant and officer in the head and body.
So he's come here and become an even bigger burden on our society with all kinds of consequences and costs.
It's wrong on all accounts. I'm looking to judges and prosecutors to do the right thing.
The president has done more to secure the border and to deal with this issue of immigration than anybody else.
It's a police officer in the state of New York, and they're not, they're not here legally.
A shocking act of violence that was caught on camera in the heart of Times Square.
Elon Musk asserted, however, that Biden wants to let as many migrants as possible into the nation. He declared Biden's strategy is very simple. 1. Bring in as many undocumented immigrants as you can. Number 2. Make them lawful to establish a one-party state with a permanent majority. They are promoting illegal immigration so much because of this. Easy to use, but highly efficient. This is the complete text of the bill. He continued, like the Committee of Public Safety really meant the Cutting Off Heads Committee in revolutionary France. It all seems so sensible at first. It explains why there are so few deportations, as every deportation is a lost vote, Musk wrote in a different post. You can actually attack police officers in broad daylight in New York, get off with no bail, give the finger to everyone, and still avoid deportation, as happened this week. Ludicrous. Previously, bordering southern states like Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona were hit by the migrant problem. However, when buses full of thousands of migrants are dispatched to Democratic-led areas across the U.S., the problem has been affecting cities like New York, Boston, and Chicago more and more. As the number of people crossing the border approaches previously unheard of heights, the humanitarian situation has intensified pressure on Democrats, notably President Joe Biden. A recent study claims that in December, a record 300,000 migrants entered the United States over the southern border, surpassing the previous record. With tens of thousands of refugees coming at its borders in need of lodging and other facilities, New York City in particular has suffered. The city has to deal with the entrance of almost 100,000 migrants in 2023 alone. Adams has been turned down for federal assistance despite his repeated requests to help house and feed the migrants in the city. Although New York is obligated to house asylum seekers under the right to shelter law, shelters are filling up at an alarming rate. Many historic hotels in Manhattan had been converted into temporary homes and improvised shelters. Hochul stated back in September that, "We have to let people know that when they come to New York, there won't be any more hotel rooms available because we are at capacity."
5 of the suspects have already been arraigned and face charges of second-degree assault and obstructing governmental administration.
Police, right here, as you can see, trying to break up a group of young men outside a migrant shelter Saturday night.
Governor Kathy Hochul sounded off, upset to learn those charged so far were released without bail.
Why are you beating cops up? What's wrong with you?
Today for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office after several suspects accused of attacking police officer in Times Square were released without bail.
In this video released by the NYPD, 2 cops are seen struggling with a man in yellow.
At one point, the men start punching and kicking 2 of the officers who suffered minor injuries.
5 are still outstanding. The NYPD says many of the defendants were migrants staying at city shelters.
That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.